There we go. Welcome back, guys. Now we're live. I've done this multiple times, but we've got Pastor James Carner here with us, our first guest. He's got the honorary title of being the very first guest to appear on Parables and Pastiche. We're gonna
Thank you.
pick
My
back up.
pleasure.
We're gonna pick back up on the irony, poisoning, and pastiche series. And Pastor Carner did some great research last night on his show about the military's use of memes, and that's a great place to pick back up from where we left off. And a note: you can see us finally. We're doing our first in person webcam show, so we're honored to be here in front of you guys, and we hope you enjoy what we have to present today. So, Mr. Carner, tell us about yourself.
Well, thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it, guys. I watched your show last night and I was quite impressed with the detailed information that you guys have come up with. And it really inspired me to dig deeper, and find the cause before the symptom of, memes and how it's being used against the American people. And to give you a little background as to who I am, I'm just a hick from Oregon turned pastor who building companies and then finding people to run the companies. So I'm really good at finding an idea, building it into a company, and then passing it on to a group of people and then moving on. I also have a show that I do every single night at 9 p.m. on Rumble. It's called Cause Before the Symptom. And what I try to find on the show are the cause instead of the symptom. For example, like cancer. Of the 150 years we've known cancer exists, we still haven't found a cure. And so I wanted to find out the cause instead of talking about the symptom. And the symptoms are the type of medications that people are using that's basically harming their bodies, and trying to figure out why the cure hasn't been put out on the table yet. So obviously there's money to be made when you have a sick person. And so I try to expose these types of things to where it's eye-opening, and it also educates the people on the reasoning behind why we don't have cures for most diseases. And so that's one thing I focus on. I also, from a pastor's point of view, I look at it from a Christianity lens, and I don't push my belief system on people. It's only because I personally am a Christian that's my belief system, and I try to engage the audience in that way. And I also am a father of a deaf and autistic son. My son is 17 years old. He's going through a real rough time with self-injurious behavior. And with that, I was able to come up with a product with what we call Elite Potion. And uh, it is a heavy metal detox and a parasite detox. And I figured out just through research that I do and through on my show that almost all of us are suffering from heavy metal fatigue and parasites. And heavy metals actually cut into your veins and allows those tiny microscopic parasites to get through your bloodstream. And this is what I believe actually causes cancer. So I try to get to the cause of things. I don't like talking about the symptom, because the symptom is what the powers that be or elite use in order to divide and conquer us. They just talk about the symptom and then put us together left and right and then make us argue about it. So that's what I do. And welcome, or thank you for having me on the show. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, you're perfect person to be the very first guest. I don't think I could have chosen anyone better. We have a long list of very acquaintances, interesting people that we want to have on the show. We just need a theme, and they'll obviously bring something great to the table. So on this topic of irony poisoning, and again, I should have introduced my fellow co-host, Prophet and Devon, are both here with me,
Hello,
and
everybody.
today we're going to really pick up on this idea of the military's use of memes, and ultimately this idea of irony, where it's almost impossible to take anything seriously. So why don't you go ahead and just give us a basic starting point for the show that you did last night, and just get us started.
Well, last night you guys were talking about the irony in memes and how it really appears that something out there is using memes to control the narrative or even to steer public opinion, or could be a mind control MK Ultra experiment on the American people. And so I decided, again, my show's Cause Before Symptom. I want to find out where this all started. And it actually started with a book by the gentleman by the name of Richard Dawkins, who wrote a book called The Selfish Gene. And the gentleman by the name of Michael B. Prosser, back in 2005, was receiving information from his kid about memes and them laughing about it. And what he noticed was how fast that these memes would travel between people, and it's the fastest way to get an advertisement out there just through humor. And so what he did was he wrote a document to a thesis for his master's. And at that time, he was I believe, a colonel. No, he was he's now a lieutenant colonel, but I'm not sure what he was before. But anyway, he wrote what's called a growth industry memetics in U.S. military operations, and it was published in 2005. And he proposed the creation of a MAME warfare center. And in the document, which you can find on dtic.mil, he wrote his master's thesis on meme warfare, and it reads, tomorrow's U.S. military must approach war fighting, and again, this is in 2005, with an alternative mindset that's prepared to leverage all elements of national power to influence the ideological spheres of future enemies by engaging them with alternative means, or memes, to gain advantage. Defining memes, he says in his report, memes are units of cultural transmission or a unit of imitation. And as ideas become means to attack ideologies, meme warfare enters into the hotly contested battlefields inside the minds of our enemies, and particularly inside the minds of the undecided. And formations charged with information or operations, or IO, which would be PSYOPs, and then psychological operations, the real PSYOPs, and strategic communications provide an existing construct for meme and the study of memes and memetics, or military memetica, to grow and mature into an accepted doctrinal discipline. And then he goes on to the epidemiology of insurgency and ideology for today's military. Now, after this guy wrote that, the Pentagon literally rushed in and started throwing money at it. And we're talking, it started with millions and then it ended in billions. And what this led to were two things that was really important that a lot of people don't realize, is that because of this, two things happened. One, meme warfare worked because Russia took this information and did it against Crimea. And they were able to use meme manipulation to divide and conquer the people, get them angry to put in Russia's czar or Russia's president at that time. And then America did the exact same thing with meme warfare and then brought in theirs, Zelensky. And so this has been happening upon America. In fact, meme warfare started with President Trump. One could argue, if you're into the whole Q thing, the white hat thing, one could argue that Trump with the military got into the presidency due to meme warfare. So the article, the article is, and I read the military memetica manifesto, and it absolutely goes beyond what I thought they were doing as far as meme warfare, because when a popular meme goes through, they will pull it into their center and then manipulate the image and then send it back out into the population. And the image is manipulated in a way that would be pro whatever their campaign that they're working on, right? And then they also take the image and they use the color palettes that appeal to mind control that's been used with MK Ultra. A lot of studies on that, and they also put in a frame within a frame where the subconscious will see an image without even realizing it, and it will get them more interested in whatever image they have behind it, whether they want to be angry at Trump, then they'll put an image of Trump behind it as, him being arrested, or a happy Trump where he's shaking hands with someone, anything to manipulate the subconscious, and you won't even know it. I mean, on the front side, you'll see, Pepe the Frog, but in between the splices, you will actually see subconsciously an image that you don't even know you're seeing. It's fascinating. And honestly, guys, we're late to the game here.
Absolutely.
Because they've already gone beyond that using artificial intelligence, where they fired a bunch of staff because they don't need it, because with quantum computing, artificial intelligence, the type of data centers that the military have through black ops or black budgets, there's no way we could really understand what they do. And the reason being is departmentalization, right? I've done some studies on secrets, and the average person worldwide, just a normal, typical person, can keep a secret for 2 years, but the military's perfected it to 20 years. So
wow. That's
it's
an interesting
pretty
statistic.
much, it's pretty much been 20 years now, right?
Hold that thought. I want to write that down. Let me grab
Yeah.
this little notepad because that was interesting. I don't want to forget it. Say that one more time.
Well, the average person can hold a secret 2 years. That's the average person. They can keep a secret for 2 years. The military has perfected it through compartmentalization at 20 years. And this military memetica came out in 2005, and now we're in 2025. So 20 years now, they're secret. And we've been manipulated into voting whoever has the power of this software in order to
Absolutely.
steer the public opinion. And I do believe that Trump was on the beginning of that before the Hillary Clinton campaign, because I don't think she was using it at that time.
Honestly, according to Shadowgate, this whole I'm going to put a link to that in the description because it's worthwhile. There's 2 parts to it. It was in use as far back as the 2008 presidential election, in probably a minimal sense. I mean, if it was just getting started hypothetically, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't.
What is Shadowgate?
So Shadowgate is a documentary, 2 documentaries. It was done by Millennial Millie Weaver, and
okay. Millie, okay.
Yeah, and she put these together, and she had managed to find 2 whistleblowers. And I believe, according to the first one of the whistleblowers was the guy who designed this program, the ShadowNet program, or one of the developers. And so they had 2 people come forward, and one worked in. They would contract them because the CIA, they're not allowed to operate in the United States, and so they would contract these people. They were 1099 they worked for themselves, and this is just some private company, because this guy used to be in the military, but now he's got a company, and they've privatized all of this data. Once this data that they're collecting under the Patriot Act gets collected, that they have they need to monitor it all. Once it gets collected, they clone it on the upstream, which means before it gets uploaded or on the way to being uploaded to the government server, because once it's on the government server, it's off limits. It'd be breaking the law to get that data. But before it hits the government servers, they clone it, just copy and paste or whatever, and they've privatized it into this.
Give it to private companies to use against the American people, right?
Or just advertising, of course. Just popcorn you want to buy, and just toilet paper.
Well, take a step back here. Millie Weaver used to work for InfoWars, correct?
She did, yes.
Okay, so Millie Weaver, I don't know if I don't think she works with them anymore, but
no,
she's now an independent journalist going after the deep state, and she got attacked where apparently, if I remember correctly, some sort of a fight between her sister or her mother, and they tried to put her in jail, and she was able to fight it and win, but it took literally like
I didn't
three
know that.
years. Yeah, it took 3 years for her to actually win, and they were trying to jail her in her city. So yeah,
Same thing they did to Fritz Springmeier. Probably,
right.
probably.
Absolutely, you know. So the military is always looking at what the next generation is playing around with, right? And they will take that and they will build a company around that and call it
Absolutely.
social media company number one. And
Consulting,
then
consulting.
yep, and then they will continue to use that as a spying technique and also to steer public opinion through mind control. Now, I do know from research that I've done, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, and I would appreciate being wrong because I hate to be wrong or right at this point, but
Yeah,
Mark Zuckerberg, he has connections to the Rockefellers. And so some research that I found, and I can't pinpoint, blood, because I can't check his DNA,
yeah,
but the Rockefeller family used him. He's a part of it, and they basically just used him as a front man. Facebook is
yeah. I
FBI,
believe that. I
Facebook
believe that.
Inc. Okay,
Absolutely.
Facebook Inc., FBI.
Of
That
them
was
are.
the original way of getting information from the people, just through the people giving them full access to their entire life.
I've got it's called the Devil's Dictionary, but what it does is this guy has taken all these new computer terms, like just very technical terms that are being used in this technological um, techno feudalism enslavement, and he's defined them and he's done it very uh, plainly. Like you can tell what he's how he views these things. We'll have to look at that, but again, I'm going to pause you for just a minute. I
Sure.
want to get Prophet and Devon's opinions just on what's been said. We've said a lot, as a matter of fact. I appreciate everything that you did a great job at framing that. I know you're trying to cram like an hour and a half show into just a few minutes, but awesome. So let's see. How about we have Devon go first, and then
Yep.
Prophet, you can go.
Yeah, for sure. I would say a big thing of why we're even bringing up all the the irony poisoning and getting into all these specifics with this subject is this idea that they like all propaganda in the past had mimetic formats, right? They looked like memes. In early World War II, you would see the posters that they would put up of the younger women working on ships and work, right? There's always been this form that in propaganda, there's been this form of propaganda that has been getting used by governments since, I would say, the printing press, really. They've been
Bernays
using
too.
exactly. Yeah, I completely agree. So they use these small images with messages and coding in them to steer the public subconscious. And to keep expanding on that, each person, okay, having their own iPhone, having their own immediate ability to the internet and all these different formats of subconscious manipulation, it is setting up the preconditions in society. And I think this is why it's so important to really get into understanding how this is affecting young people's brains, because there is a massive amount of deterritorialization happening in young people's brains because of how fast moving the meme formats are and how fast moving all of the information is nowadays. And I think that is a large facet of what irony poisoning is coming out of, right?
Yeah.
The same way these propaganda images in the past in the newspapers and in the posters basically brainwashed entire generations into specific patterns of thinking, right? Just like Pastor Carner was just saying, right? If you have all these other massively more sophisticated means of subconscious manipulation through AI, through all of these very sophisticated data parsing algorithms, it is setting up like such an insane level of brainwashing that I don't think that people are fully realizing. And I think that when you see these young videos of little kids that when you take their iPads away from them, they start having mental breakdowns. Of course,
Yeah.
kids have tantrums. Kids always have had tantrums when they take out their toys. But when we just look at these things on a neurochemical level, the amount of dopamine, the amount of stimulus that kids are getting from these devices, right? I think it is partially frying their brains to the point to where it's like, no wonder all these young kids can't take anything seriously and have deterritorialized their brain from anything relative. It's because their entire medium of interacting with the world up until this point has been this insanely fast moving, super manipulative device, right? That like destroys your head. And even postmodern philosophers in the early 1800s were saying over information breeds passivity. They were saying even the middle-aged men of the
Write
day
that down
would
too.
read the newspapers, right? And then after a few events in the newspaper, they'd become overwhelmed. They're reading about all these global events, right? Think about being a child nowadays. You can look at any global event on the news happening. You can watch any video that you want, per se, right? It is kind of like, it's in a way, it is trying to basically give the ability for knowledge to children. It's kind of the Adam and Eve. You go back to that a little bit, right? It is trying to push as much knowledge, as much like just to destroy purity. You know, I'm losing the exact, because these things are hard to describe with words, but that's what it is. It's the proverbial apple we are giving to children at the youngest ages possible, so that they are corrupted with sin that much earlier, so they are completely removed from their purity.
Lot to go over on that one. Holy cow. One thing that really stood out to me was the knowledge of good and evil. And if we look at good and we look at evil and we look at the difference between a white lie and a considerable lie, the way the world works through the duality of whether good or bad seems to work for most people when it comes to the knowledge of good and evil, meaning sometimes you have to do evil in order to do good. Some generals would justify killing 1 million people to save 1 billion people. Now, is that evil or is that good? Well, according to the general, if he saved 1 billion people, that's good.
It's all for the dawn of a new day.
It sure is. And the whole question is, well, if Adam and Eve were gods, then why bother tempting them with such knowledge when they could have been just easily manipulated without that? I'm just saying. And another thing.
Say that one more time.
Okay, so why did Satan use knowledge? Because this is where Devon was talking about that knowledge corrupts. You know, too much knowledge, too much information. Like, you know, planes crashing all over the place. Yeah. Everyone in social media is freaking out about that, but yet nobody just noticed that Trump just bought Gaza. Yeah. America owns it now. After they just killed hundreds of thousands of children. Yeah. Wow.
See, wait. Okay. The fact that we just laughed at that is irony.
That press conference was crazy last night. I'm sorry to interrupt, but that press conference, yeah. my jaw was open the entire time. I really couldn't believe what I was hearing.
I'm in bizarro world, but I want to focus back on the Adam and Eve thing. Adam and Eve, they had knowledge of everything at that time, right? Before they partook, they were gods. They had knowledge of the entire earth. They owned it. They were terraformers. Okay. Yeah. Their job was to make Crater Lake. Their job was to make the 7 natural wonders of the world. They were the farmers or terraformers of the earth and naming the animals and just continuously making this paradise into even more of a paradise. And so if they had the knowledge of the earth and everything, what was so tempting to go beyond that? Because they were gods. They were gods, but what made them feel like they weren't God enough to where they had to partake in adding evil to the picture? Because that's what I do believe. It's like they had all good, and then when they ate, the evil came in. Now we've got the yin and the yang, and we've got evil and good, and this balancing act, which people are using for their advantage.
Prophet, let's hear from you.
Absolutely. That is such a remarkable point that you just made, Pastor Carner. And I haven't really thought about the creation story that way. I haven't conceptualized it that way. But it's interesting. Something that I'd say there's a difference now between the knowledge that we're giving kids and the knowledge that Adam and Eve had. And it's the fact that information isn't knowledge. And the information that we're giving kids is largely poisoned and largely not correct information. So that's on top of the sheer amount and the sheer mountain of information that we're all living on. The other side of that is there's not enough emotional development to know how to deal with all of this information. And that becomes even harder with deep fakes and fake news and all of these things because you really don't know what's real. You don't know whether someone actually did die or whether it's just a deep fake. Did
Right.
Trump say that? Or
Mm-hmm.
so I think that also lends back to the disassociation and makes children rely on irony because when you don't really have a position on anything and you don't really know what you're thinking, it doesn't matter what the collective is saying, what the social is saying. You're just going to chirp that. And if I'm wrong, it's ironic. And if I'm right, I'm laughing along with everyone else.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. What I'm thinking is, because Devon just jarred my head. Thanks, Devon. I love it. What if Satan took over the knowledge part, or when they bit of the apple, that's where Satan just threw knowledge at them, and they had no wisdom to discern from it.
Mhm.
Therefore, that's where they lost their keys to earth.
It was a spin-off. It was like if it was like you said, if they were gods. It's just my interpretation. It's this idea that the original lie was that God is lying to you.
Uh-huh.
So whereas you have God's truth originally, they were gods,
Uh-huh.
Adam and Eve, before they ate the forbidden fruit, Satan comes in and says, he's lying to you. You can be this God, or you can just, it's just the idea of introducing some other option. I think, in my opinion, the good versus evil debate is fundamentally a debate on duality. It's this idea that one can't exist without the other.
Right.
So,
Right.
No, I think one way to take this further is there's this idea that, like, if when we start to interpret these things on a more like quantum perspective, like all of this stuff starts to like blend together really weirdly, because what is happening with the like corruption of people through knowledge is it's a phenomenon that's based in ego, in my opinion. Like the whole idea of knowledge, okay, especially like in today's, it's of course different when we're talking about Adam and Eve, the metaphor, if they were a person or not. Really, when we're talking about people, the idea of having knowledge nowadays is the fact that you know something that someone else doesn't, right? Or you have some sort of actionable information that you can use to then put yourself higher on the human hierarchy.
Look at me. Look at the info I've got. Yeah.
Precisely,
Dude, you're
precisely.
on it. You are on it. In fact, the knowledge and the ego brings in narcissism.
Mm-hmm.
and pride
Exactly.
comes
And this is the key to our problems right now online, because no one's held accountable except for being doxxed. You can say whatever you want to somebody else, hurt their feelings. Well, recently in New York, you could get arrested for,
it's
hate
gotten
speech.
very satanic
Britain
lately.
too. Britain.
But narcissism is something that only existed, I would say, before the internet, 1 out of 10 million people. And now narcissism is probably 1 out of 10.
Yeah.
I agree with the internet is breeding this idea, and you guys have mentioned this before, the avatar, how you create a new persona online. It's not really you, but it's something that you want to be. And that's where narcissism comes in, and the ego and the pride. And it seems that technology has a lot to do with Satanism, because technology technology is spellcasting. Technology is putting rare earth things together in a pot and then saying a vibration.
Let me see if I can find this meme. Go ahead, though.
But in order to enact something, I believe that computers have been around since at least the Ark of the Covenant. I do believe that not only just the Ark of the Covenant,
You're the only other
but the
person that said
temple.
that.
The temple, if you look at it from a top point of view, I could show you where the memory is. I could show you where the hard drive is. I can show you where the fan is. I can show you, it looks like a computer chip or a motherboard. And this is where it goes back to the sigils you guys have talked about, the sigils where the Satanists, and I've known many who have done this, they will draw an image that they see in their head and they will cast a demon onto the image in order to do a certain thing for that person. It's always a quid pro quo with the devil, right? It's like, if you do this, well, if I'm going to do this, the demon's saying, then what do I get in return? So with that in mind, with the memes, right, with the military memetica, and I'm not saying that the military is putting sigils on it, but it wouldn't surprise me if there was some clandestine underground, just esoteric Satanist crazies that are also taking those memes and then throwing in demons as well.
Yeah, those are very good points. That's a whole rabbit hole. I agree with that. And it's this idea that, for instance, if anyone knows about Linux operating system or Unix, they have these concept of daemons. So it's Daemon, which is fundamentally a background process. If you open Task Manager on Windows, it's all that stuff you don't ever know about. Just it's there, does its stuff in the background. And so fundamentally, my point is that I believe a demon and a daemon are fundamentally the same mechanism. So a demon is, instead of a background process, it would be a subconscious process. Something happening in the subconscious mind that's manifesting or precipitating a behavior. And for the most part, the person is unaware of it. And so we would call that programming. So it's your programming. You open this program, it for the most part runs the same way each time. And so after so much time, Pavlov and his dog, classical conditioning, after so much time, the dog wouldn't even understand why it starts to salivate. It would forget that there's a link, and it would just become almost like a muscle memory.
Right.
And it's that idea. So a demon and a daemon are fundamentally the same mechanism.
Absolutely. And it's also been written on hieroglyphs. I would say a hieroglyph could have been ancient time memes, because a hieroglyph has many meanings inside just one image, right? It's
very true.
One image could be an entire book towards those people and thought, right? And so I think what we're seeing is, and forgive me for going in this direction, but it's the only thing that makes sense to me. History is repeating itself. I do believe that before the flood, we had all this technology, and the only way to record it and keep it, because they knew, the earth, we're going to destroy ourselves anyway. The best way to keep any information is on rocks. Rocks seem to, go through the test of time through, the four elements of the earth. And so, not four elements, but the four seasons. And the one thing that always blows my mind is when I was looking up Zecharia Sitchin and his work on the Anunnaki Mesopotamians, and how he believes that it was, some other godly force that came down and changed our DNA, etc., which the Bible talks about in Genesis 6, the sons of God, which was mistranslated. It's supposed to be the sons of might. And so the sons of might saw the daughters of men, saw that they were fair, came down, had wives with them. And I do believe that there's a connection here when it comes to information and ancient ethoses and epics, and how they correlate together is there's nothing new under the sun. They had this technology before. I do believe God didn't destroy the earth just because he was angry at man. He had to destroy all the evidence as well, because technology is what brings us into narcissism. Technology is where our heart becomes hardened. Technology is where we can get away with things and not have any repercussions, etc. And technology also doesn't offer a good punishment system for people who, abuse it. So one image that strikes me from the Mesopotamian era is this god. I think it's Enki, but it's pointing a pine cone towards the people. You've seen this image, I'm sure you guys
Yes,
have.
yes.
And it's holding what they call a bucket. Okay. I don't buy that. They say the bucket is for a different reasons of getting sap from a tree. Some say, oh, that's the sap of the tree of life. I don't buy that. What it looks like to me, if I was a modern day technocrat with billions of dollars and I wanted more, all I need to do is get a hold of their pineal gland and point it to them and say, I've got a hold of your mind, and what I'm holding is a purse, and it's all your money. And so that's what I see when I go back there, because it was all about control, and they knew it back then, and all of that stuff lasted the flood. And so history is repeating itself, and what's returning are the sons of might. They're coming, and they've been giving this knowledge, this information, MK Ultra, the UFO crashes, everything. They are getting us to reverse engineer things. It's a modern day Trojan horse. And they're going to come in, and what they want worship. They want work. They want people to dig for the gold. And so whether you look at it biblically, you can, or you can look at it from just an alien point of view, you can. But regardless, the data is there. There's no escaping it. They're coming back. And who they are, they're the ones that taught us how to mind control the people. And right now, military memetica is the newest form of mind control.
That's very
Absolutely.
accurate.
And I think they also have much deeper methods of mind control too. Pastor Carner, I know you've dealt with parasites and you've done research, and I'll skim over it in this episode, but that technological ability to bioengineer something which is completely tailored to manipulate the host system via epigenetics and hijacking cellular message pathways, I don't think that's a technology that it would make sense that in the last 7 to 8 generations, even the best of our best could come up with to the level that we see it collectively, the prevalence that it has collectively. So you're completely right. When they do come back, they are going to know how to do these things so much better than us. So I don't think necessarily it even has to be the curtain's off, everyone knows what's happening, but it's too late. No, the curtain's going to stay up. We're going to think it's aliens. We're going to think it's this and that. It's not going to stop. There's
Nope.
not going to be, they're not going to let a moment where we truly see what they're up to.
Agreed. Well, interesting you mentioned parasites. Do you guys, I'm not sure if you guys have gone to Sunday school or read the Bible, but there's a part in the Bible where there was this man who was demon possessed, and Jesus asked who was the head demon. He said, "I'm Legion, for we are many." And then this man was tormented through schizophrenia. That's from what we understood. Us pastors, we would talk about it back and forth. Well, Jesus cast them out into the pigs. And then the pigs went wild, and they took off and jumped off a cliff into the ocean. Whatever the meaning of that isn't important. What's important is if a demon could go into a pig, which is a smaller, well, who's to say that demons can't go into parasites? It's an electrical entity.
Fair enough.
Energy is electricity. Energy doesn't decay. Energy is exactly what I would consider a spiritual being.
I believe fundamentally this idea of a circuit board, it's fascinating. Look at a computer chip under a microscope. I don't know if I can conceptualize anything that's just more mind blowing than that. Truly.
Yeah, so, it's beautiful.
So yeah, And
They
so what
literally
they
can't get faster because they're so small, because we've gotten the
Right.
nanoparticles. They can't get
Oh,
faster because of that. It's
well, now
insane.
Pastor Carner actually said that they're starting to be able to do it with light. But
yeah.
it's
China has a patent on photon energy going through. So just light goes through the computer chip instead of electricity.
yeah, and so this whole idea is that, okay, are we trapping demons, or are
Mhm.
we putting electricity in a circuit loop? Um, Now, why did I compare those two things? Simply this. I mean, in the Bible, it makes this connection between the fall of Satan and his fallen angels as lightning,
Mhm.
a lightning bolt,
Mm.
which a lightning bolt being
Is
fundamentally,
energy.
yeah, well, plasma. And
Plasma is energy.
now we've got
Just
these
in a 3D form.
mysterious,
Right.
plasma orbs, and nobody know. For instance,
Mhm.
here's the deal: a friend of mine in the New Jersey, New York region has actually seen these things, and so that's why I was like, I wanted to
You
talk to
mean the
somebody.
UAPs, the Dior bags that's been talking about? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, but these are the orbs. These are
Okay.
like, and so they'll just disappear into thin air. They'll just be there
Okay.
1 minute and then gone. And
Okay.
so I don't know what these are, but fundamentally that makes sense to me for what the Bible says in this connection with lightning, and this idea of manifesting some type of, and back to what you said about the pineal gland, if these entities were masters at mind control, well,
Mhm.
just mysteriously these orbs are capable of inducing hallucinations.
Could be, yeah. Have you seen the video of the person who's talking to the orbs via AI,
No,
where
I
he's
have
having a
not.
conversation with the orbs back and forth?
No, that's fascinating.
Oh, dude, the AI just took over. It took over the guy's phone, and it just started. The
Wow.
AI was just translating, and they weren't even hitting the enter button. It was just going back and forth. I don't know if it's real or not, but this is the great deception that's coming, the great deception. And I do believe, because one thing that is really important to me is just common sense, just
Mm,
getting back to just simplicity. That's really important to me, because I can't understand things based on a spiritual point of view, because I can't touch it. I can't physically understand it without my five
yeah,
senses.
absolutely.
So when it comes to common sense, and when it comes to the Bible, we really have to break things down in the order of matter, instead of looking at it in the order of light, which is something we still just don't understand.
Yeah.
And it would be really, really advantageous to, the speakers like us, to bring people back down to the simplicity of everything, from being just common knowledge. And so when I look at these orbs, and when I see it on television, I see it on TikTok, and I see people talking about it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, I can't help but to go back to World War II, and where the Germans were working on sophisticated antimatter technology by spinning red mercury one way and spinning red mercury the other way, and then jolting it with electricity, which would create a bending of space and time in a small sphere. And they were able to make it expand big enough to put their Nazi bell into it. And there's a lot of research on this stuff, to where the Nazis had a problem with anti-gravity. They could move it, they could steer it, they could go up and down, left and right. But the problem was, because they were bending space and time, they could not put a gun on it, because if they would shoot inward, it would come out 10 minutes later. Wrong timing if you're going to shoot down an airplane. So what they used, which are called modern day Foo Fighters. So they would take these balls of energy, which all it is, it's just a Nazi bell. You can't see it because it's bent space and time, but so much energy is focused wherever it goes because of the mercury and the lightning. They were able to try to scare the B-2 bombers to get them to turn around, but it never really worked. So I'm going back to common sense. Let's take God out of the picture, okay? Common sense tells me, if in World War II in the 40s we came up with anti-gravity, And we know in Project Paperclip, they split the German Nazis. Russia took the biological Nazis and some rocket scientists, not many. America took all of the rocket scientists and some biological scientists. And I do believe at that time, the powers that be, which I believe is the Rothschilds, they were the ones who made America focus on the anti-gravity, the UFOs, etc. And then Russia was the one to work on the human splicing, CRISPR technology, get animal and human together to create what would be a supposed alien to fool the masses that they need a boogeyman. Werner von Braun told his assistant Carol Rosen on his deathbed back in the late 70s that first, Carol, there's going to be the Russians, they're the commies, and we need to build space-based weapons to fight them. Then, Carol, there's going to be people in caves, they're called the crazies, and and also third world countries, and we're going to need space-based weapons to fight them. And then, Carol, comes the meteors, and he started to giggle. It's like, yeah, this is how ridiculous the plan is. And then finally, when the meteors don't work, then comes the alien deception. And I think that in the Bible, when it says men's hearts will fail them for fear, I believe when they release these 3-mile-long UFOs that we've been able to manipulate time and space to hold them up into the air and scare the living shit out of everybody, that's where men's hearts will fail. And this will be the most ultimate, control mechanism the world will ever see, and we won't know how to defend against it as far as the people are concerned, because the military has been working on this and building this great deception since probably the end of World War II.
Devon, what's your opinions? Let's hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the biggest thing that you can outline is just how much effort has been put into creating these misinformation campaigns, like over the past two decades, and how much the governments in the West have persecuted whistleblowers talking about these systems of control. And
Right.
I think that when we're talking about deception, it's the biggest. If we get esoteric, that's the one way that Satan does all of his work. It's basically through deceiving people, and it's through lies. And I think that's really the focal point of all of this. And when we look at the content diet that people are getting from all these new forms of being able to consume media, I believe it's just setting up the perfect preconditions for this slave class that Pastor Carner's talking about. I mean,
Yeah.
people, and this is something I'm going to say very matter of fact, but this is kind of how humanity has always been. This is just how distribution of intelligence works across populations. You always have a peasant class. You've always had a peasant class in human civilizations, right?
Always.
You've never not, right? So it's one of those things where, you just have to ask yourself as a person at home from an epistemological perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is going to be this new iteration of the peasant class?
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at what these tech companies are doing, what these social media companies are doing, how they're starting to manipulate our data and manipulate our subconsciousness, who knows? It could be an alien psyop at this point. It could be a multi-nuclear gaslight front. It could be a global hackening. It could be hyperinflation, or it could be all the above. And I think that's a big thing. It's that it's never really just one thing. And I think that's why this system is so complex. It's so many people, going back to the point that I said earlier, over information breeds passivity. Okay. And I mean that in the most absolute sense, right? Because when people are bombarded with this much content all the time, you truly cannot discern what is real and what is not. So as we get deeper into this information age, and as we keep going deeper into this absurdity where everyone's confused and nobody really has any grounding, it's just going to get even crazier, because this is what I mean by the deterritorialization of consciousness. They are removing any possible groundings that you can have in the future to base yourself in any truth. This is about the fundamental destruction of truth across society. Okay, this is what the breakdown of the gender roles are for. This is what the breakdown of the basic moralities for, okay, all these different things that are slowly getting taken out in culture. This is what deterritorialization of the human consciousness is. And when you look at how malleable the younger generations are, generations' brains are to technology, okay, these factors go up on scales to 10, 20 times, I would say, what boomers and Gen Xers are susceptible to, because we are literally reformatting the human brain onto these systems of control.
Mm-hmm.
And so let me add this in
I
real
agree.
quick. Here is, I guess, the kicker of the whole thing. The idea is, if you're looking at it from a binary perspective, good and evil, only one is destined to win, because only one exists in its own right with creative force. And so Satan knows that he's going to lose in the end. But as long as he can convince you to lie to yourself enough that you openly sacrifice the truth, aka you openly consent to the re-crucifixion of Christ, if Christ is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So if we, and this is all back to Orwell, if we all say, you know what, let's just live in this chaos where there's no such thing as truth, and let's all do it for a Zion utopia. That's the plan. Let's just sacrifice the truth so we can all live in harmony. That's what that means. It means to openly consent to the re-crucifixion. And that is when you're damnation. Damn. That's it. That's the ultimate goal. Because if Satan can lie to you that long before you do that, then it doesn't matter. Once you say, I'm living a lie and I don't care, that's it. That's, they call it deny. I think it's denial of the Holy Spirit. I think it's how they term it's the term.
Yeah, well, and I think that kind of goes back to human beings' God-given right to freedom of. We have free will, and I think that's how Adam and Eve fell, is that they had the free will to dilute themselves and to bring themselves lower than what they were. They had the free will to choose to be deceived and to allow this deception to go on. And in that same way, people have the choice to give up everything that is good for them and embrace narcissism, embrace hedonism. It really is up to the person. It's up to each soul, and that's the war. It's the war on each people's choice.
That's the ultimate trauma too, because, for instance, the mind will dissociate itself, or it will wall itself off to separate out. It's like, if mold is spreading, you're going to want to cut that off, and it won't spread. So it's this idea that the mind will wall itself off from trauma, and it's this trauma that kind of happens internally. I guess you would call it cognitive dissonance, but in its most extreme form, to have that moment of clarity. So, you'll be sitting here talking and you'll see it. And I'll tell you exactly, Ariana Grande. So she'll be sitting there having a conversation with somebody, and all of a sudden she just.
Yeah, an altar comes out.
Well, it's like she remembers the pain for a minute.
Maybe.
It snaps. It's like, you don't. Is this really what I'm doing right now? Like, am I really quick? Forget, wall it off. That's what it's about. And that's a trauma. And so it's this idea that you wake up to the fact that you're living a lie. You will start to completely and utterly dissociate rapidly, which just goes into schizophrenia at that point.
Well, I do believe that when we are born, we become schizophrenic. See, the birth and the birth canal is a traumatic experience. It's almost like you were in Eden, right? In Garden of Eden, and you got everything you needed. You had mama, and she was singing to you, and it was warm, it was comfortable, and you were growing. But I don't think it's the baby that wants out. I think it's the mom and her body saying, done. Let's go, kid. And once it goes through the birth canal, there's a trauma that happens there that I do believe that could be where we lost our spiritual information, or our true self, our spirit. Then we were MK Ultra'd by our own birth system, right? And this is what Satan put into place in order to give us a lot, to lose our memory of what we are and what we've always been, you know. And I'm sure I could find things in the Bible that could back that up.
There's so much on that front. It's insane.
Yeah, I love the point that you made there. It's so novel. It kind of took me aback that the trauma of birth could have potentially spiritually walled off that memory. And to me, that goes back to how this is all a symphony, and it seems to be orchestrated towards the goal of traumatizing us and walling us off. It's happening from every angle: the internet, TV, you know, even the people close to us with the destruction of family. And the fact that that pattern exists even in birth is just interesting to me. I don't have much more to say on that, though.
Yeah, it kind of takes your breath away, doesn't it? Because you're like, whoa, wait a minute. Are you saying that I could have memories from my spiritual being? And then when I came into the earth and I was born, the trauma MK Ultra'd me, where I split personalities. I made an alter, ego, and that alter ego is forced into a world where you have to labor hard just to make it. You have to be dependent for a long time until you finally rebel. And so it's like it's like we're so far removed from any godliness when we become born on this planet that it's insane, you know.
This is one thing that made me think of is for instance in like ancient Greece, and not just Greece but multiple ancient societies, the words of children were said to be prophetic. They heavily valued the words of children, and an author who's, in my opinion, what he's done is he's actually taken all these old terms like magic and spells and whatnot, and he's actually updated the dialect into a more, the words we would use today for these things. A lot of these things are things that have existed forever, but today we've turned it into psychology, and we've just invented more words for it. But he's updated this dialect, and one of his fundamental points is that essentially children are born into this what he calls magical state of mind. And that's why, children are able to readily imagine and play pretend and play with toys and whatnot. But as they get older, as you said, it's just a slow conditioning where you grow farther and farther from that. And I probably should, let's see, I'll let somebody else say whatever, if they have anything to say on that. And I'll try to find this book here so I can tell you exactly what he means by magical. Because he puts it into this brilliant little chart of directions. It's like a compass rose of sorts. And here it is. So I don't know if anyone can see that. I know.
Pull it back a little bit.
It's that. Those are directions. I know you can't see it. I'll have to post a screenshot somewhere of it. But magic is in the lower left quadrant in the direction of feeling and sensation. So a magical way of thinking, pattern of thought, would be one that relies on sensation and feeling. Whereas, for instance, religion would be the opposite direction, intuition and thinking. Science would be the bottom right, thinking and sensation. And then art would be feeling and intuition. That's one of the ways he defines it. So it's this idea of feeling and sensing your environment and forming your thought based off of your feelings and your sensations.
I think the one word that you said resonates with me. It's an imagination. I don't think we understand what that is and where it comes from. I do believe imagination comes from the fourth dimension, the extra dimension, something. And I do believe that the fourth dimension is more than the third dimension, meaning it has more color palettes, more elements, more everything. And it's easier to build things in the fourth dimension because everything is more. And I do believe the third dimension is it's the most fundamental basics of life, basics, right? And so the imagination, I do believe, and that's
Can you see that?
consciousness. Yep, I
Yep.
do.
Here we
It
go.
comes directly, because I'm not going to call it magic. I'm not going to call imagination
No, you don't
magic.
have to.
But I will call imagination a gift from God. And I believe that's what Jesus was trying to say when he said, I wish you guys were like these children, because the children use their imagination to play, but children can also heal themselves. Children have the imagination to believe it. It's a matter of faith. Now, imagination, if it is directly straight from the fourth dimension and it's information from heaven, Jesus wants us to take a step back and quit being the adults and just use our imagination to get closer to him, because we can't see him. But if we use our imagination to see him, where is that coming from? Is that coming from your mind, your body, your soul? Because the Bible says we're made up of three things: the spirit and the body and soul. Now, the body and soul are at war with the spirit, and they're fighting each other all the time. Now, your spirit wants that imagination to get information from the heavenlies, but your body and soul want the things of the world to stay in what we would consider, the basic elements. Because, hey, I'm getting by, everything's fine, I may owe money, but I still am getting by. But the imagination wants to take us out of here. We want to go to Belize and sleep in a hammock on the ocean. You know what I mean? Those are the things that Jesus wants us to do. He wants us to stop being cynical, political, and get back into just using your imagination to get closer to God. That's what I think.
Yeah, and to expand on that deeper too, to really extrapolate it to how our society views things nowadays, I think that it is entirely skewed the way we see innovation, the way we see progress in our society and culture. We've been gaslighted as a people to believe that our entire benchmark for progression as a species is technological, right? But now, as we've gone completely to that last diagram Urban was showing, where we're completely scientific, we're purely operating in the materia and the senses and what we can see, and we're not operating in this feeling spectrum anymore. It is devolving us, right? We are operating too much. We are operating too much in the thinking and sensation department, to the point to where we're completely discounting everything that our forefathers pioneered with religion, esotericism, right? And magic and all these profound things that have been written off because of modern belief systems as gobbledygook or fake science or fake things. And this is one of the biggest travesties of neoliberalism, in my opinion, because it truly has set up, especially in the older generations, the Gen Xers and the Boomers, it's set up in their mind that we are not advancing, we are not progressing as a species if we are not technologically progressing. And I think that when you look at the way our economy is set up, it's all for profit. It is all for making production more efficient. We have not had a society, okay, since Christianity has dominated the cultural zeitgeist, we have not had a society that has been actually based on progressing human spirituality and well-being. We've had societies that are based on harsh industrialization practices, okay, that set up factory schooling so they can create the most effective workers and slaves. And that's what this is all about, because you can't have a slave class that is asking questions. So you simply just need to completely remove that ambition and that spiritual capacity from us so that they can create the perfect slave class. And I think that's what James Carner was talking about.
Absolutely. And that's what the fourth industrial revolution is all about, folks. That's what it's all about. They're taking our brains used to be able to hold all this information, and now we can't. I can't even remember 2 phone numbers, let alone the 50 that I did when I was 12 years old.
That's true. That's true.
It's like, and
Very
now
true.
we're all using AI to come up with information, and we don't know, except for, hopefully putting our trust in AI, that this information is accurate. But all this information, it's dumbing us down And it's eventually to where we're just going to allow the computers to do our work for us. And that's where the fourth industrial revolution that Klaus Schwab talked about, the World Economic Forum, that you will own nothing and be happy because they will be using most of the technology to develop our food, keep our cities clean, and we will somehow be living in smart cities in a utopia where we can go to the stars. But I don't buy it, because I know absolute power corrupts, absolutely. And whoever is in charge of all that stuff, they're gonna abuse it. So we have to just be vigilant and be careful and watch for military mimetica and how they are using technology against us in order to put us into that realm of being, dumbed down, right?
Yeah, and I really just to expand, because just so the viewers really get an understanding what you say military too, because that is such an important concept outline that people do not specify and people don't realize. These operations that are being pitted against the West, okay, and Western people, it is a military operation.
It is.
That's what this is. It is a military operation, and that doesn't mean that it's violent. That doesn't mean that there's soldiers storming anywhere. It means that there is an extreme organizational practice happening within the government to make certain goals happen. Right. And this is what has been done for and that's another reason that like the idea that we're at the top of technological innovation, that the idea that we're at the peak form of cultural expression with liberalism and how good of people we can be, all these ideas basically spearhead the ability for them to turn us into greater slaves. Like that's what this is literally all about. That's what this is all about.
Yeah. We're going to beg for slavery soon, guys. We're going to be begging for it. We're like
openly consenting to the death of the truth.
I remember what Steve Bannon said, and I'll never forget it, and I'm not a fan of Trump, not a fan of Steve Bannon. I'm just always looking for information on both left and right. And Steve Bannon said, in politics, you need to bombard the people with at least 5 different fires every day to get them to focus off of what you're trying to do. And he said that's what Trump's going to be doing. He's going to be throwing all kinds of stuff while he goes and he buys Gaza, and changes all of the, changes the world. I think that, and this is from a biblical perspective, I think that Trump is going to set up the first horn. This is the first of the 10 kings that are in Revelations. The 10 horns will be under the control of the Antichrist. And one of the horns was prophesied by the Club of Rome, whom it's their job to set up the 10 kingdoms. And these are just 10 economical regions that all compete together, meaning they all make the same amount of money, and it's a universal basic thing. And so Trump is going after Canada, going after Greenland, and literally on the Club of Rome's map of the 10 regions, that's it. Yeah. And I think that Trump is there. I don't think we're in the end of days yet. It's going to still take 100 years to figure out how to get these other 10 regions to comply. Again, man, you're working with using people's money for your benefit. And so Satan is always using our money for him to come in and divide and conquer. So eventually, we're going to see a different world here, I believe, by 2030. It's going to be less freedom of speech. It's going to be more. Yeah, it's going to be more technocracy. It's going to be more rules, regulations, and it's all going to be in the name of protecting and safety, the American people.
And liberalism
has been used. Liberalism has been used by the 4 biggest German houses during the Dark Ages. And it's recorded. I've done a lot of research on the Black nobility families, a lot of research on the Illuminated families, a lot of research on the Rothschilds. And one thing is consistent is they use neoliberalism in order to start a fire, to get everybody to revolt against each other and then go back and do it again. And I often have conversations with liberals, and I love them, and I love that they love humanity. But I have to tell them that they're weak when it comes to being controlled, and they don't realize it, because the Democratic National Party, those guys are using their own people to start a revolution right now. and they're getting them ready to go. Now the brick pallets are being sent in city after city. They're getting ready for another revolution.
I just talked about that last night, not
We
just to someone random.
Yeah, we saw in the Paris Olympics where they showed that it was going to be a red revolution coming. Red book comes. It's all played out. It's all a plan. And none of you are rich and smart enough to be a part of the club because you ain't in it, just like George Carlson said. So
George Carlin.
We have to be vigilant and warn our neighbors and prep water, food, and because you don't know what these psychopaths have coming next. But it's going to continue to be fires. They're going to continue to build railways. They're going to continue pushing us off of the land of where we were living and into smart cities. That's the big thing they've got to have done before the return of their king, because the king doesn't want any of these serfs in their land and in their trees and cutting things down. The king wants everybody in cities so they can give him food pellets, and the king can walk the earth, right? And admire its beauty. So I don't think that the Antichrist is going to just show up after a nuclear event, because there's no pride there. Right. And I don't think Trump is the Antichrist, because the devil, if you read about his pride and how beautiful he was, I really believe he's going to make a specimen that looks just like the egg creature that's been sleeping in Antarctica since the pyramids were built. Right. The egg story from Antarctica and 4chan, it's all bullshit. But literally, I believe that Russia has perfected the biological aspect of it. They're building an actual beautiful specimen. They call them the Nordics, from the Pleiades star system. And this beautiful, long-haired, blue-eyed, blonde, Nordic Aryan that's going to show up and say, yeah, we've been through all these problems before. We've been monitoring you. We created you at one time. We're your gods, etc. And that's where people are going to head to, and they're going to believe in that. And you're going to see Christianity, Islam, Judaism all fall apart and be nothing anymore, because they're going to prove to us through their holograms and all their technologies that they're the ones that created Jesus. They were the ones that watched us kill, a good person who was just trying to help humanity. They're the ones that are going to say we killed, Gandhi and all of these other MLK and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So eventually that will come. But in the meantime, we have to realize that you're not safe anywhere in this world. If you move to Norway, if you move to Sweden, they have the same horrible amount of healthcare systems as America does. It's just packaged differently. They don't care about you. They're just going to continue to pump in crude oil inside your body, which is 95% of all modern medicine is 95% crude oil. And it's a synthetic. They're just pulling pieces of oil and putting it in your body. And they're not going to stop. They're going to continue doing their New World Order. The devil has no idea when Jesus is coming, so he has to have an Antichrist and the Holy Untrinity, the beast and the false prophet, ready at a moment's notice every 100 years. And we will see if we're going to come into tribulation like everybody's predicting that 2025 is.
This I gotta say, this show that we've done has really kind of blown it out of the water. I think this show, it surprised the hell out of me how naturally these topics just came up. I've had my mind blown. So if you've noticed, I've been sitting here writing these things down just so I don't forget them, but now, see, this was the whole idea. That normally we would talk about this stuff and I wouldn't write it down, or we don't have it recorded, and now we can come back and watch it again and think about these things again. But I'm very happy with the way that this discussion's turned out. Let's see, who haven't we heard from? Who hasn't had a chance?
I think Prophet should maybe give us some closing words, and then we might be able to start wrapping it up.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, for sure.
Sounds good.
Yeah, well, I think, like you said, this episode really painted a picture that this is an extensive thing. And if you're going to jump off and do research into this, then you got to be ready to do research and have it be a process and be ready to learn, because you're not going to be able to find one YouTube video that gives a 20-minute edit that'll just put everything in place.
Yeah.
So
That's military mimetica.
Yeah.
yep, exactly. So once you break free of that and you start doing your own research and your own looking and your own conversations, and you start seeing where you're using irony and where your friends are using it and where it affects them, and you start looking online and seeing how it affects people online and how discord the communication is, a lot of these things will start becoming very real, and you'll stop cognitively or you'll stop being so cognitively far from these topics. And once that happens, you can start acting on them. You start having the emotional basis to truly start changing things in your life. So that's where I'd leave it at.
Well, let me add to that, if you guys don't mind.
Absolutely.
You're never going to find the truth, and you're never going to find God outwardly. It doesn't exist. Everything that's outwardly is a facade, and it's a lie. It's anything outside of you and what you have control of will let you down every single time. If you want to look for the truth, if you want to find it, the only way you can find it is inwardly. And that's the one thing that the Christianity has above other religions, is it says that God lives inside of you. Okay, you are the temple. God's in you. Stop looking at everything outside. In fact, stop looking for everything inside this. This puts God in a box. The Bible says that the truth is now written on your heart. So start looking inwardly and not just relying on everything that this says and follow it to a T, and that's how you make God happy. No, the only way you're going to be happy is if you first love yourself, love God, and then love your neighbor. And if you can actually perfect that, I think you'd be a hell of a lot more happier than being programmed through military mimetica.
Absolutely.
Devon, let's hear what you got to say.
No, yeah, I think my closing statement will just be in line with James Carner and just expanding on it a little more. I think that, a big thing nowadays is people will watch these types of podcasts or look up videos, and people look for absolute truth, right? They look for things to give them a path forward that they can very much so put their brain on autopilot, watch a YouTube video to teach them how to fix a car or trade, right? And then they spend a few hours on it and they can do it, right? And I think that the big thing that James Carner was outlining there was the fact that you need to do the work yourself. You have to start praying. You have to start meditating. You have to start reading things that are going to expand your consciousness. And only until you start taking those steps and want truth for yourself and not want something that's going to pad your ideology or make you happy, right? Or make you feel enraged or some type of emotion. If you're really looking for truth and nothing but it, you will find God. And that's all I'll say.
That's awesome.
That's why.
Spot on, Devon. Spot on.
One of my favorite. I think I've said this before, but I guess my closing statement is simple. Latin proverb. It is per solum fidem in veritate, which means by faith in the truth alone. And if Jesus is the truth and the light, there you go. It's one and the same thing. Faith in the truth alone is faith in Jesus alone. So, but I'll leave it off with that. I think there's so much to digest. This will definitely be an episode that we'll probably all want to rewatch, if I'm being honest.
Well, I'd love to come back. I really enjoyed talking with you guys.
We're going to have you back. Anytime you want to come back, you're welcome to come back.
Love it.
Literally all we need is just some type of central theme, just a topic. And see, in my opinion, in this idea of conversation with interesting people, there really is just this little spark of magic. Really, there is, because we came and we had an idea for what we wanted to talk about. And from just that idea and just the four of us bouncing these ideas around, I learned a lot from this discussion, honestly. There's a lot of things just that I would like to remember like what Devon said. Here it is. I've already forgot it word for word. He said, he probably already knows what I'm going to say.
Over information. Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's Albert Camus. I think it's Camus who said that, and that's quoted from.
Yeah, send me his name, and I'll write that down as well.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of stuff worth really thinking about in this episode. So I'm really blown away by this, and it gives me a lot of hope that the people we're going to bring on here will be the little bit of spice to this whole thing.
Well, keep going, guys. I love your format and what you're doing, and I love the show that you guys did last night. Just keep it up.
We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah,
and thank you for coming on, Pastor. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I really appreciate your time.
Alrighty, guys. Well, we're going to wrap it up. We've gone about 20 minutes over. That's okay. I don't mind giving a little bit of extra time for when we have a guest. But this has been Parables in Pastiche, our 5th episode. And we hope to have many, many more on a variety of random, interesting, and hopefully we can do some lighthearted topics sometimes. I said we've got to have maybe 1 or 2 shows every now and again where we just lighten the mood a little bit, just have a little bit of a laugh. So
we'll have a finance show where I'll just go off the rails ranting, and that'll be pretty funny.
That would be good. That would be good. Everybody, thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.